Britain used to understand the year a little differently, not just as 12 months, but as the seasons of the soul. There were moments for endurance, for romance, for harvest and gratitude, moments for reverence and rejuvenation. And embedded in those moments was an entire season dedicated to creation itself. A month where the calendar revolved around women, life, and the moment something new begins. But somewhere along the way, we've just kind of forgotten because modern Britain still obviously has March. We just don't remember what it meant. And when you look back at the old traditions, Mothering Sunday, Lady Day, the Spring Equinox, Ember Days, Lambing Season, something surprising appears. Because I think that March might be Britain's forgotten season of femininity. And at the centre of it all sits one of the most important and forgotten days in the English year, Lady Day. So this video is part of a series that I'm doing on Britain's forgotten traditions. Now, to be absolutely clear, people of course still celebrate these days. I mean, Mother's Day is everywhere and the Easter traditions still survive and farmers obviously know what lambing season is. But what we've lost is a sense that they once formed a whole season together, not just as separate entities. The stories, the rituals, little cultural moments that helped shape who the British actually were. Because lately we seem to be having a lot of debates about what it means to be British. And I do want to talk about that in another video. I mean, that is already planned, but I don't really think we can answer this question if you don't understand the stories that formed us in the first place. No, I'm not a history channel. This is not going to be turning into a GCSE revision session, so don't panic. But culture doesn't appear out of nowhere. The things we believe, the way we see ourselves, the way we mark time, they all come from somewhere. And sometimes looking back at these traditions grounds us. It tells us more about who we are than any modern political argument ever could. So if you enjoy these little dives into Britain's cultural calendar, I hope you stick around. Because I think that the past has a lot more to say about the present than we give it credit for. So I want to start this video with the holiday that we all know about, Mothering Sunday, or as it's known now, Mother's Day. Now, Mothering Sunday was about going home. In medieval Britain, people who worked in service were given one Sunday in Lent to return to the church where they had been baptised, their mother church. But on the way there, they would often stop at their actual homes, visit their mothers, bring simnel cake, wildflower posies, or small gifts. So Mothering Sunday became a sort of pilgrimage to the place that raised you, the place where you were rooted, your sort of motherland, the place which defined who you actually were and where your ancestry was often formed. And fittingly, it also fell on something called Refreshment Sunday, the one Sunday in Lent where the strict fasting rules were relaxed. Churches even swapped their purple vestments for rose pink, which means that the Church of England was embracing soft pink centuries before Instagram discovered the aesthetic. So if anyone ever questions your commitment to pink, just tell them that you're honouring a long-standing British tradition. You're absolutely welcome. But Mothering Sunday was only the beginning of March's season of femininity, because just a few weeks later came the day that used to shape the entire English year. For nearly 1,000 years, England didn't consider January the start of the year. The year actually began on March 25th, Lady Day, the Feast of the Annunciation, the original New Year's Day in England until 1752, the moment that the angel Gabriel appears to Mary and tells her that she will carry the Son of God. And Mary says yes. That moment became the spiritual beginning of the English year. The entire agricultural calendar, the legal calendar, the financial calendar, all began with the story of a young woman agreeing to bring life into the world. Rents were due on Lady Day, contracts began on Lady Day, farmers prepared their fields on Lady Day. And this day is one of England's quarter days, significant days throughout our calendar which mark the moments of changes to our seasons. So in other words, the entire country used to run on a seasonal rhythm instead of whatever chaos of a calendar that we use nowadays. And it makes way more sense to start a new year in spring rather than a cold, miserable January. Roman Britain would have also celebrated a version of Lady Day, the Ides of March, originally a festival for the Roman goddess called Anna Perenna, celebrating the cycle of the year beginning again, although today the date is mostly remembered as the moment Julius Caesar discovered the downside of office politics. Now, just a few days before Lady Day comes the spring equinox, the moment where light and darkness are perfectly balanced. In older pagan traditions, this was the moment associated with the goddess of dawn and renewal, often called Ostara, a symbol of fertility, rebirth, and new beginnings, which is why eggs and hares, both ancient fertility symbols, become associated with spring celebrations. And around the same time, the Christian calendar also held something called Spring Ember Days, 4 times a year where people would fast and pray for the seasons. Spring Ember Days were about blessing the land before planting, giving thanks for the earth that would feed the nation. And across the Celtic lands, people told that story in a different way, but one rooted in the same aspiration for building the future. They said that winter itself was an old goddess, the Cailleach, a crone who ruled the cold months. And when spring came, she didn't die, she just transformed. The old winter hag becomes the maiden again. The original new season, new me kind of a girl. And while all of this was happening in churches and calendars, something else was happening in fields and barns. Lambing season! I mean, this is just a wonderful excuse for me to flood this episode with B-roll of lambs. You're welcome. Because across the countryside, the first lambs of the year would be born. A chaotic, muddy, sleep-deprived miracle repeated every spring. But historically, this wasn't just farm work, it was a community moment. Neighbours helping each other through long nights, children allowed to stay up and watch the miracle of new life. Spring wasn't just something that you kind of looked at, it was something that you actively participated in. So, again, what is the point in looking back at all of this? The point is that modern Britain often feels a little unrooted. Like we're living in a country that has forgotten the deeper meaning behind its own calendar and has actively encouraged us not to want to engage with our past or the stories that formed us. We look at other countries and applaud their cultures of family and traditions and have actively mocked those who, in our own, have wanted to celebrate those for years. But March used to tell us a story about mothers, about creation, about the power of the feminine. Mothering Sunday honoured the women who raised us. Ostara honoured the fertility of the earth. Lambing season reminded us that life always returns. And Lady Day, the day that once began the English year, placed a woman at the centre of the entire story. And that feels like something worth remembering. Because if a nation forgets its stories, it kind of starts to forget itself. So maybe this March, instead of just rushing past it all, we just slow down a little. We notice the lambs, we think of our families, our homes, and take in a little of our own traditions. Notice the green returning to the trees in the longer evenings, and let's start remembering who we actually are so that we don't let our stories get rewritten. So when March 25th arrives, happy Lady Day. And if 2026 has already been a bit of a disaster for you, just chillax. England's New Year hasn't even started yet.